right, I'm here with Tom for the midweek pod. Tom, how are you doing? Are you all recovered?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like today's my first human day back from being struck by COVID. About a week turnaround, so it's not too bad, to be fair. How are you?
Yeah, doing all right. Yeah, yeah, back to normal after also getting infected by the plague a few weeks back. So took a
Yeah.
little while, that did. But yeah, I'm doing all right. And well, it's a good day. We are talking on Wednesday evening, and the deal to bring in Ratcliffe has been ratified by everyone: the shareholders, the stock exchange, the FA, the Premier League. So it's fully done. 27.7% purchase of the club. It will go up to 28 in a bit by the end of the year. And for the first time since 2005, there is not a single Glazer shareholder that is the majority shareholder. So this is good stuff.
Yeah, I even saw some of our players like it on Instagram, which is, it's always, yeah, I always kind of think that they're probably best not to just do that, because then they've got to like everything, and people will just track like everything that they like. But I thought that was quite
Yeah.
interesting. And obviously he's come out and said exactly what the fans want to hear at the moment with some of his statements. And that's lovely to see, talking about a new ground, which is, I think his preferable choice, I think he said, and got to take United back to the glory days and focusing on football. And yeah, he's obviously saying the right things right now. So
Yeah.
it's genuinely exciting.
Yeah, it's a new dawn, isn't it? We can feel better about the situation at the club today than we could the day before yesterday. And it's you're right. He's saying all the right things. It feels like he's here to be a custodian of the club. And for like mechanical reasons, I think he hasn't fully bought out the club. There was that in the tender document, we saw some of the kind of communication, not in detail. It wasn't the minutes of the negotiations, but the sense of the different types of structures of bid that Ratcliffe put in before the Glazers would accept. And this looks like the only deal that was really on the table, a minority shareholding for now, which will, I think, given the way it's structured, go to a full ownership over the next 3 years or so. I mean, time will tell, but that there are strong indicators. I would say that is what is going to happen. And Ratcliffe has come in and said all the right things. I mean, it is all weirdly structured, isn't it? So he owns 27%. The 6 Glazer children all own less than that. And there is still some out in the public domain. Not much of the company now is owned, is publicly listed. He is doing this with his own money through a vehicle that's registered in the Isle of Man, investing into a Cayman Islands registered company, which is listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So it's always, all fun and games there. But it just feels like this is the only deal that was available for now. And what we did learn through the process, we knew already, is Ratcliffe is fabulously wealthy. He has at least £4 billion in liquid assets, so cash, available to him. And we think something like 29 billion in total assets if you take into account his shareholdings in INEOS, of whom INEOS Sport are basically the vehicle that are running the operations, even though they're not the investors. It's all quite complicated. But anyway, it all feels much better than what we had previously, which was various lackeys reporting into Joel Glazer.
Yeah. And obviously it's 2024. It's the new modern football, the new look of modern football. It's a Brexiteer who owns a petrochemical company. It's not like we've just kind of got the old businessman down the road, though he is from the north, and he is a businessman kind of down the road, but he's not quite the type that used to own a football club yet. I don't know, even as like 30 years ago or 40 years ago, or back in actual time, like it's still not the ideal owner, but like I think in this day and age, you can't really wish for that much better, to be honest. And like we've spoken about before, like we could have had Qatar, we could have had a hedge fund. It's it's about as good as it gets, really. And like I said, like some of the statements that he's made have been exactly what the fans want to hear, and also kind of the way the movements that have already starting to take place, like looking for best in class, which he said is what we
Yeah.
need in a director class, in the executive class of the company, which is, I mean, it's something that we've obviously spoken about loads and loads before on the pod. Like it's not rocket science, and the statement of intent going after Dan Ashworth, I'm sure we get into Dan Ashworth's qualities and his pros and cons and all that, and all the messiness that's involved regarding us trying to poach him from Newcastle in a bit. But it's really positive, to be honest. Like, I mean, there's definitely doubts. I have hesitations, and I'm not super excited. There's a lot of people on Twitter who are kind of like blowing up, and then there's other people who are kind of like, oh, it's not going to be that great. Still full Glazer, sale only kind of people, and everything in between. I think I'm definitely optimistic, but I still obviously we need to see that need to be put into practice before I get too
Yeah.
excited and too carried away.
Well, look, I mean, taking those points in turn, he's definitely not perfect. There will be many fans who don't agree with his politics. He's a Tory. He's a Brexiteer. He lives in Monaco for tax purposes. He may be from Palesworth originally, but he's a long removed from those roots, I think. And his company makes some of the most polluting products in the world. It's petrochemicals. I mean, they're known mainly for these plastic pellets that then go into other plastic products, which never decay and will be polluting the planet from here until the end of time, basically. So none of it's awesome, really. If you look at him as a business person, I don't know whether that's better or worse than the local businessman who made sausages, which is what we used to have, or the Glazers who originally made their money from fish canning and then cheap strip malls. I mean, and they like if you remember Andy Green, Anders Red back in the day, like dove deep into their seedy little business, and it really was some great stuff there. I think his blog's still live on the internet, even if he doesn't publish anymore. So I don't know. We've had a bunch of crappy owners. Wayne on a previous pod a couple of weeks ago talked about some of the better owners, and it seems to me, again, time will tell, that Ratcliffe is doing this for legacy purposes and he's likely to be a better owner. And you can't doubt his credentials. I mean, what he has done very successfully over time is take toxic assets, literally and figuratively, and combine them together to make a much stronger business. INEOS is now a business that has 65 billion euros worth of revenue per year. There's still people I get coming to me on Twitter going, oh, this guy can't afford it. 65 billion euros of revenue per year. He paid himself personally £500 million in dividends last year. Personally. So, I mean, like, there's no doubt. This apart from the state-owned clubs, this is now the richest owner in the Premier League. We think it's all a bit lacking transparency. And then, what does he want? He wants, as he said today in his interview with Dan Roan at the BBC, world class in every position, and they're structuring it as such. There will be an overall PLC board, of which there are a couple of INEOS representatives on there. And then the football club board is basically all INEOS people. It can be Barada, the CEO, Jean-Claude Blanc, the head of INEOS Sport, Brailsford. And then we're going to get, I assume, a new football director, a new head of transfers or negotiations or whatever you want to call it. It looks like they're trying to bring in Jason Wilcox to do that, and a completely new modern structure with competent people who, as you alluded to there, have actually done the job before, because what we've had, like for the bunch of, a decade now, are people who are like first timers in the job. Edward Wood, first timer in the job. Arnold, first timer in the job. Murtagh, first time in the football director job. Darren Fletcher, bless him. Yeah, we love him, but first time as a technical director. It's just like learner drivers in charge of a Ferrari over and over again. So as part of that modern structure, it looks like we're bringing in Dan Ashworth from Newcastle. A bit of fun and games this week, haven't there? Newcastle have put him on gardening leave and seems to be all sort of playing chicken on the negotiations, doesn't it? Threatening to make him wait out the rest of his contract.
It's kind of mad that in this day and age you will pay £20 million for a sporting director, and I guess if he is as good as kind of the mainstream media will lead you to believe, then £20 million is nothing compared to what he could create for the football club in terms of not just like the signings and the recruitment, but the culture as well, which he's supposed to be a culture man, isn't he? He's supposed to be like the man who will come in and change the whole dressing room. And apparently he's like the man behind the change in the England DNA that we see now with the Southgate and all this kind of stuff. The thing with Dan Ashworth is that, I mean, in some respects, it's quite exciting because it feels like he's the best in class, but it also feels like it feels like the most mainstream appointment that there could be. Like, and it feels like we're just going after this man who everyone knows is going to be great. It's like Henry Winters lauding him, and like everyone. If you said to anyone on the street, any football fan on the street, name a director of football, they would name Dan Ashworth because like they don't really know anyone else. Like he's the man. Like everyone knows who he is, and he does kind of have this reputation of being like very infallible. Like he's everywhere he's been great. Like, but he has made mistakes and stuff. He was the man who appointed Sam Allardyce as England manager, for example.
Yeah. Well, he was on the committee.
Bizarre, is it? And like. And it's kind of this weird, nebulous thing with directors of football. Like, I mean, I think it's a good appointment, sure, but I don't want to get carried away and think that he's like the Messiah or anything, because so much of his role is kind of nebulous. Like, what is culture? Like, what is like DNA? Is all these kind of buzzwords that are kind of associated with like high performance podcast stuff, and then you also like look at recruitment, like how much of the recruitment, of the good recruitment at Brighton, for example, is down to him? How much of the culture is down to him? How much of the signings at Newcastle are down to him? Is it the good ones? Like Anthony Gordon was a great signing, and I don't know, Dan Burn or whatever, or is it the bad ones? Is like Sandro Tonali, like one of his, like, and kind of Eddie Howe talks about how Dan Ashworth isn't part of like the inner circle, as he liked to put it, and
there's been a lot of tension there,
the biggest high performance podcast kind of stan there is and stuff. So it feels exciting in some respects, but I think that excitement should be tempered. And Jonathan Liu wrote an article, and I know a lot of people have like Jonathan, like some people hate him or love him, and he's a very he can be very snarky at times, and that article kind of did come across that way, I think, to a lot of United fans, and a lot of United fans have kind of jumped on him being like burn him at the stake type of thing. But I think there are a lot of good points in there, and I think it's important not to get too carried away by who he is and his previous experience, because like he is infallible, but he is, I'm sure he's great in a lot of respects, but I think the way that kind of English football holds him as some like absolute messiah of English of English football. The reason why England are great again, kind of thing, is a bit
Yeah.
overstated for
Let's
sure.
temper our enthusiasm a little bit. He is a suit after all, and football fans, like, it was one thing discussing finances and debt and bonds and leveraged buyouts and like minority transactions, all that. Getting excited. I'm not going to get a boner for a fucking suit. Sorry. It is important that United get the structure right. And he seems a person from all reports that will do that. He'll get the right people in the right places and set up the system to succeed. He is not the man who was doing the deals at Brighton for unknown South American players. And as Eddie Howe likes to point out, because Eddie Howe does not like having a director of football, he's not been on the inner circle there. So I think that's part of the reason why Ashworth wants to leave, I think, because there's tension. He's going to come into a situation at United now where there is like the most modern of modern structures. A football-oriented CEO, a football-oriented board, high performance. I mean that in sort of lowercase, not uppercase. High performance oriented, world class, quote unquote, people in each position, and learnings from 6 years of INEOS being involved with football and other sports now, of all the mistakes they've made to get to this point. So that makes me feel good. The Ashworth stuff, the kind of, you said Henry Winter, Henry Winter gets out of bed and he's wearing Union Jack shorts, isn't he, and drinks out of his bulldog mug, and so I take that all with a pinch of salt. And then the Lou piece, I find his writing generally entertaining. I don't know whether he really brings out much insight a lot of the time. He is by default completely snarky, and the thing that that didn't annoy me, but I thought was a bit of a cheap shot about that piece, was he spent the last few years correctly pointing out what a clown show of a club United is for not having a proper modern football structure in place. And then as soon as we get a modern football structure in place, he gets all snarky about appointing someone to lead that modern football structure. You can't have it both ways. I'm sorry. So default snarky, fine, but they just felt a bit rich as a result.
And I don't want to come across like that either, because obviously, like, we've spoken so often, as I said earlier in the pod, about how we need to get the right people in, we need to get the best in class, and it does feel like this is the best in class. If we have kind of like done a massive search, and like Radcliffe's men are all kind of thinking who could fit into this project best, and it's not just kind of Dave Brailsford's mate from when they used to be at England cricket together, and that type of thing.
It doesn't feel like they've done an exhaustive search, but maybe they have behind the scenes. Obviously
it doesn't.
Takeover's taken a long time.
There is skepticism peppered into my the way that I kind of just phrase that. But though, having said that, to try and put a real positive spin on it, he has created really good projects. And you look at Newcastle, obviously it's easy when you've got it's easier when you've got so much money. It's not easy because look at United, we have so much money and it's never worked. But the culture there has shifted enormously. England football, the culture has shifted enormously. Brighton, for example, they've been set up now to almost take over European football. It feels like they're in that good of a place. Everywhere he has been a success. And if you want someone to take over an English football club, a modern English football club, and for him to get to grips with a project with people he knows in a system he knows, to build it from the ground up, because that's what it feels like he's done a lot of in previous times, really, really just starting again and ripping everything up and creating it in his image, I guess, in the way that he thinks is best. I don't think there is probably that. Maybe there isn't a better man out there for it, and maybe that's why he is such a mainstream Dan, because he is just so good. We'll see.
Mainstream Dan. That's a great nickname. We got Big Sir Jim or Sir Big Jim. Which one? Big Sir Jim and Mainstream Dan. Awesome. Yeah, we'll see what happens with Wilcox and the other people. I assume Murtaugh's going to go. I think I mentioned it on the pod with Dan at the weekend. Dan Harris, not Dan Ashworth. Too many
Mainstream
Dans.
Dan.
Mainstream Dan. That there's a fantastic anecdote from Norcross in the Times at the weekend about how Murta screwed up the signing of Haaland from Mulder by getting the time wrong and calling Mulder at the wrong time. I'm just like, come on. You know, like in my career, I've done a few things. I was in management consultancy, a strategy for a long time, and venture capital. I've come across a lot of people who talk in this kind of high performance way, and a lot of it's absolute bullshit. And my cynicism radar like starts peaking quite heavily, and I can kind of smell it. And so there's a little bit of that about. I feel like there's a lot of that about Brailsford. Feels like he would have his own personal high performance podcast over breakfast every morning. Ashworth seems a bit more understated than that. He's not been a big media guy and been front and center all of the time. So that seems like culturally a little different. But I think the culture thing is important. Like United need to say, line in the sand now, what happened before is gone. We are doing things right now. And so much of the pain that we've like kind of suffered over the last 10 years is because of poor structure and poor management decisions. Not like all the focus is always put on the manager. Moyes, Van Gaal, Mourinho, Ollie, like it's always on them. And we've failed around them. It's not like there's a lack of spending. I think there was a report, I can't remember, Mirror maybe, kind of detailing like why exactly United have a FFP challenge. It's because it's 550 odd million spent over the last 3-year cycle. And so much of that is just awful spending, and the front and center right now. And, not to beat up on him just for the sake of beating up on him, but it's the Anthony transfer, a signing that United's own analytics department valued at 25 million euros, and they ended up doing it at 100. How? That can never happen again because of the knock-on effects are so just extreme. And that's why we're in a difficult position. And there's nothing about this Ratcliffe takeover that will fix that. And there's nothing about potential Qatari owners that will fix that either, because we're in a world of profit and sustainability rules that are very, very tight on how much you can inject. And the maximum you can inject is 105 million over a 3-year cycle. But that money has to come from somewhere. There's not a magic money tree that's just going to produce that. Even Ratcliffe, even the Qataris, there's equity owner injection. So, and it's even tighter on UEFA rules, which is where we want to be. We've got to work to those which are sliding down to a 70% squad cost by 24-25. And that's going to work for everybody. So organically, we're going to have to build this club again. I say we as the community. Ratcliffe and the new team are going to have to build this club up again. It's going to be a long road. There's no magic fix here, but it starts with making the right decisions, and that comes from having the right structure. So, in that sense, it all feels positive, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the culture thing. I know it sounds very nebulous, and how do you build a good culture? I don't think it's by like sticking slogans on the wall and as stuff that Jake Humphries mentioned on his podcast and stuff like, work harder, not smarter, or whatever bullshit that they want to say. High, sour, low. But that really is such a huge thing that does need to change at this football club, because I think I find it just watching Sancho last night and how bad he was for Dortmund yesterday, and you just kind of just look at the broken players that have been that United have churned out. We need to the big thing that needs to happen, especially when you look at like the financial constraints, is that when people walk through their door, that they're gonna improve at this football club, and they're coming for success.
Yeah.
Like that's what happens at all the best football clubs. Like City obviously spend a lot of money, but they don't buy. A lot of the time, they don't buy players who are ready-made world-class talents. Like there is a lot of growth that needs to happen for a lot of those players that they sign. Obviously,
most of the time
things are easier. So obviously things are easier there because there's not, if one player fails, then they're not completely hamstrung financially by that. But it's the same at Liverpool. Like a lot of their players that they buy, look at Mo Salah, for example. Mo Salah was nowhere near the finished article when he went there, but he improved as a player and he bought into the success that Klopp had kind of bred at that football club. And that's one of the huge things that obviously needs to change. Obviously, when Fergie was there, then the whole culture was very easy because he created it and instilled it for 20 years, and it been emboldened and strengthened by the success that he obviously had. But that's but looking from the outside, the most difficult thing that needs to change. Like, especially if you're a suit, being able to come in and change the culture of a football club and the changing rooms and the locker room and all these massive egos that exist inside of them, to change that while all that is to change
Yeah.
the wheels while the bus is moving is very difficult. And but that is obviously the big thing, and that's what, if we're led to believe from all of the press who do love Dan Ashworth, the Henry Winters of this world, that is what Dan Ashworth is all about. It's all about changing cultures, and that potentially is really, really exciting.
Yeah. Well, we'll be selling Dan Ashworth underpants in the NQAT merch store. Oh, right. Union Jack with Dan Ashworth on the front. Yeah.
And a bulldog
well,
with Dan Ashworth's face on the head.
You can just see it now. Shall we sing the national anthem while we're at it? The a line to all of this, I think, is the interview that as we're speaking, it's not all come out. There's just sort of clips of it that Ratcliffe has done with Dan Roan at the BBC, in which he talks about the development at Old Trafford. I think we'd heard some of this through sort of back channel briefings previously. People had said that the preference was probably to build a new stadium. The architects who had been assigned to look at the master planning at Old Trafford, Populous, had already said that they think that the stadium's reached the end of its shelf life and a new stadium probably needs to be built. Now, Ratcliffe has come out and said it, basically, that's the preference, is to build a new stadium. My personal feeling is, I went into it and some detail with Wayne a couple of weeks ago, and he's the history buff, and he the history buff said, look, you can keep the history with a new stadium, and I think that's probably right, and I think it's probably the right thing for the club overall. You can finance it. It's a brand new build with all the facilities that you want, and you don't have to worry with the legacy. And this is basically what Ratcliffe said, that you still, like, even if you do a reskinning job, you still have a 100-and-something-year-old stadium underneath it. So, because at the Bernabeu and at Camp Nou, they're basically taken everything out. They just kept the shell of some of the concrete bowl and they're building on top, and they're just rebuilding it, basically. And Bernabeu, not quite as extreme, but they're hundreds of millions of euros projects. Those were over multiple years. And so it's like weighing the net, feels like new stadium is probably best for the club overall, even if it's obviously 100 years of history that you're kind of burning in the process.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It'll be so weird. It'll be so weird to go into a new place, and it will take so long for it to feel like home again. I feel like it's not just like you can just walk into somewhere. Like, it's just the way that you are with your own house. Like when you move places, it takes a long time for it to feel like it's yours. And that's going to be the same way. It's going to take a lot of time getting used to it. And it's going to have to take some massive wins and some special nights and special experiences for it to feel like that as well. And it's going to be so difficult to get it right, I guess, in some respects. I mean, the blueprint is there from someone like Tottenham, who've been able to really truly create something special. Cost them a lot of money to do so, but you have to make it unique, and that's what Tottenham did. Like, you can't just go and say, oh, we'll just do what Tottenham did, because it won't fit United. It has to be a unique experience. It has to be unique to the football club. Like what they did with their one stand
Yeah.
is with something really special, and it helped to create that incredible atmosphere that you do get at Tottenham. And you wonder whether like the unique aesthetics of United that can be incorporated into a new build or something, that's going to be super costly to do something like that. The reason why a lot of stadiums look the same is because that's the cheapest way of creating them
Yeah,
to
yeah.
look like
But
that.
then you get some fucking soulless, horrible bowl like you do. First time I walked into the Emirates, 'cause
Exactly.
I literally love Highbury, right? It was it was small, but there was something like authentically sort of attractive about it, and the developments they had done there over the years in the 90s kind of added to it. I think the clock ends. It was kind of sympathetic to what Arsenal was, and walked into the Emirates just immediately. Fucking hate this place. It's horrible. And even now, there's no. I mean, people used to joke about the Highbury Library, and they're all very civilized and all of that. But even now, the Emirates never has an atmosphere, does it? It's just the new stadium of light in Benfica template exactly the same,
It's
and there
exactly
are
the
so
same.
many
Yeah.
templates. This is literally exactly the same. I
Mhm.
do look to the States and what has been done with some of the stadiums
Oh yeah.
there, and there are some like pretty crappy ones, new ones that no one likes, like the one that replaced the RFK Stadium in Washington, everyone hates. But the SoFi Stadium in LA, magnificent venue. I mean, it
Yeah.
cost $8 billion or something like that. The one in
AT&T
Atlanta,
in Dallas. It's incredible.
AT&T in Dallas, very special. Some of them are like feel more basic, like the one up here in Seattle. It's pretty bare bones. I mean,
Mm.
it's 65,000 people, and I did three sides of it. Really, it was a bit odd. And
Yeah.
but there's like the concourses and stuff are pretty basic. But I went to New Yankee Stadium. I enjoyed getting absolutely policed for beer and a hot dog, like just phenomenally expensive. Oh yeah, I'll take out a mortgage to pay for this hot dog. Yeah, great. But it's a great venue. So there are the right ways and wrong ways to do it. And like he only hinted at it in this interview, but he talked about Trafford being the sort of industrial heartland, and it's kind of, can you incorporate things that are meaningful to United and to Manchester into a new stadium if that's what's going to happen, and can you do it in a way that feels authentic? And I think that that's going to be really hard, because I think about the thing that gets the spidey senses tingling is, and I know this is much smaller scale, but every year United come out with some kit which is supposed to be authentically Manchester, and it's just so much inauthentic bullshit behind it that you can smell and go, yeah, this is not right. This is just some fucking intern who's done a bit of Googling and gone, oh yeah, cotton mill. We'll do something that's about authentically. You remember that one with the
Mm.
the kitchen tablecloth kit? That's what they
Yeah.
claimed it was all about. It's cotton past or industrial past. We've got the rose at the moment, and like every year. Oh, the stripy one was apparently a kit they played in, for a game in 1906 or something. But it's all so much bullshit, and that's what you don't want. You want something that feels authentically right, and that we could, feel is home. And yeah, I think you're right. It'll take a while.
And
When
it's
we moved
also
into this house, the missus painted every single room, like to put her stamp on it. So,
it's also
like,
like the fact that at United, you are on top of the players. And at so many of like the old grounds, like Goodison, Upton Park, what it used to be, White Hart Lane, like Highbury, you're completely on top of them. And one of
yeah,
the awful things that happens and with a lot of new stadiums, like the Emirates that you mentioned, and obviously the Olympic Stadium, which is obviously a little bit of a different situation, but you're too far away. Like there's such a gap, especially at the Emirates behind the goal and towards the corners.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
such a gap between the pitch and the players, and that's one of the things that is difficult to replicate with the new grounds. But then it makes the game and the ground scene so soulless. Like
yeah. It does.
it's just
Wembley's
that's
like that, isn't it?
oh my god, you're so far away. And I don't know if you've ever been to the new uh, I think it's called London Stadium, the West Ham one. It's
No,
unbelievable.
I
It's
haven't
just
actually. I've only been on
backing it
the
away at
outside.
you.
I've walked through. Yeah,
And it's awful. It's just a shit stadium in general. Like the concourse is soulless as hell. It's horrible. But I mean, not that United aren't going to create anything as crap as that, but it's still that. It's almost not going to happen. Just being on top of the players, and that's what's so great about Old Trafford. You feel like
Well,
it's
if
so
you think about some stadium, like I like what's it called, Signal Iduna Park? Borussia Dortmund Stadium. Like they are right on top of the players, and they have that huge stand with the yellow wall,
yeah,
and I think you don't have to do it as a circular bowl where every side, because that creates perfect sight lines, which we basically have at Old Trafford now, except for I don't know if you've ever been up to the third tier at the North Stand.
yeah. When I was
Hate
really
that
young,
experience. It's like watching football through a letterbox. Hate it.
yeah,
Horrible.
but it done
But
once.
a lot of the new bowls, they are like everything is perfect sight lines, and it's executive facilities in all corners of the ground. I mean, if you saw at the Super Bowl recently, they had sofas behind one of the end zones and all this kind of nonsense stuff, and bottle service and whatever. And it doesn't feel quite right. And it's almost like a new stadium should have some of that for sure, because there is demand for corporate facilities, and they'll pay 10 times what a normal ordinary fan will do, and it will keep the prices down for everyone else, presumably, or reasonable. But like, what is it we want as a place that fans can gather every week and be together with their community? Like we're trying to replicate in the J Stand, the singing section, and Red Army section. Would it be possible to have a single giant wall of United fans replicating something of what the old Stretford End was?
That would be
I don't know.
incredible,
Well,
wouldn't it?
time will tell. It's going to be years and years in the making, this, because of design, planning permission. We have in Andy Burnham someone who has said publicly they'll be completely supportive. They kind of have to be, because, I mean, they have bent the knee to Abu Dhabi and everything City want to do. So they better fucking pony up some cash and resources for supporting United now. And that brings me on to the other thing that Ratcliffe has said and was kind of leaked out previously, is that they're looking for levelling up money to support the regeneration. And he's a bit kind of opaque, I'd say, in what he said about whether it should be, he said a national stadium in the north. And I think that would suggest they're looking for taxpayer support on the actual stadium build. That may be tricky. But regeneration money for the area and for transport links, why not? I mean, why not? I mean, you talked about the London Stadium. That is entirely taxpayer funded, and of the Olympic Park, Queen Elizabeth Park around it, and the transport, entirely taxpayer funded. West Ham are benefiting from it for the next 100 years, and they pay £3 million a season. So, why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm just looking forward to the hysterical media outrage that Manchester United benefiting from the taxpayer, City and West Ham playing entirely taxpayer funded and owned stadiums. Arsenal and Tottenham took out below inflation loans during the pandemic. Taxpayer funded, by the way, Bank of England loans. So I don't know. Taxpayers seem to fund some clubs.
When you think of just what Man United is, the brand, like, and what it does for the country in so many different, like, in a lot of countries around the world, like one of the things that you would say about when you say to someone, I'm from England or whatever, they would literally say Manchester United.
Manchester United, Bobby Charlton, the Queen, in that order, yeah?
Literally, like,
well, we should just replace the royal family and use that money to fund Old Trafford. In fact, they can move. There'll be plenty of space. We'll have the stadium tour and the museum at one end, and the royal family can move into the basement at the other end. There you go. And, we're killing two birds with one stone.
But we are just a world's famous institution that, like, massively benefits this country, and I guess people forget that a lot of the time.
Yeah. If Toyota wants to create a new car plant, that would have a massive tax break. So I don't know. These it'll obviously create a lot more noise than might be the case with an alternative club, because United are the soap opera. And so
I just can't wait for those bloody Jeremy Vine TV phone in things or whatever that bloody shot.
Has Sports Horn done one yet? Colin from Portsmouth.
They are really good. They are really good.
Yeah. But anyway, Radcliffe's got a solid argument there. Let's see where he goes with it. I mean, of course, the counter argument is he's fabulously wealthy, so why does he need the taxpayer to fund any of this? And we'll see what happens. I think there's a clear direction of travel. I have to say, one thing I've enjoyed over the last couple of days is is people winding up the Qatari flag shaggers.
Yes.
You don't see that a lot anymore, do you? In Twitter bios, the flag, it seems to have disappeared.
Oh my God.
But yes, there were a few of them who either sat on the fence or who were publicly boosting Qatar, who've gone very fucking quiet.
And it's hilarious as well. Like literally selling out all their morals and soul by literally just some AI generated bloke on Twitter. Like, come on, have a look. Hopefully it'll mean that they actually do have a look at themselves and kind of go, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be as morally bankrupt as I was during that time period.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be a dick and name and shame, but like we know who some of these people are, including some people who sat on the fence for months and months and months because they wanted to protect their relationships with the club, some media folk. And I kind of understand why they did that, but to now turn around and go, I never wanted the Qataris and, I don't know, I don't buy it. To the other end, right, it's okay to name and shame because he's such a public figure, but, Goldbridge, who said, and I'm glad people have shared this clip, who said, this is the end of the club if Ratcliffe takes over. And now seems to have completely forgotten he said that. So anyway, I know he's an entertainment figure, not an actual news source. So put it in that context. I just, some of it is, some of it is very strange. I do quite find there's a chap who did a really good breakdown on all the legal aspects of the tender doc and the transaction action document and all the related materials that came out. Called Ollie_was_right on Twitter. I think he's the US-based lawyer who has taken great delight in winding up all the previous flag shaggers. I would quite enjoy it.
But you like to say,
we are one club. We'll come together. We'll heal this divided community, and we'll go forward together as one. But in the short term, fucking hell, those people who were quite prepared to sell themselves out to an abusive state just for the a few better people kicking the football. Have a good hard look at yourself.
You say that he's not a news source and he's just an entertainer, but people do see him, especially young lads and stuff, which is mostly his fan base, who know no better because they kind of they've seen Goldbridge and they're big YouTubers, or maybe they're just getting into football for the first time or getting into United for the first time. And I can remember when I used to get into United, when I was really getting into United, there were thankfully a lot of good people on Twitter that I used to follow, and there were certain journalists who were out there, and it was a lot less murky, the whole kind of online world. Those people were kind of seeing it. They do see him as an authority, rightly or wrongly. And it's really dangerous, what these kind of people, the way that these people walk themselves around. And they might say, oh yeah, I'm an entertainer, in the same way that fucking Alex Jones did when he was in court and said, oh yeah, none of it's real. But his believers believe it's real. And in the same way as that, Goldbridge's believers believe what he says and everything that comes out of his mouth, because in a lot of cases they don't know any better. So it's fucking dangerous, and they should fucking know better because they're adults.
And this may be unfair, but you don't half get the impression that the Venn diagram of Andrew Tate followers and Goldbridge followers is a perfect circle.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe unfair, but it feels kind of, same vibes, same energy. Yeah. All right. We'll heal as one and move forward. Manchester United community is a better day today. I do think it's going to take a long time for this all to play out, and we're going to have some patience in the short term. It's going to be making the right decisions this summer, and we'll see if Ashworth's in place by then. Maybe difficult, but in the meantime, it looks like they're going to make a bunch of appointments, and it's a really big summer because United have been hamstrung for years and years and years by not being able to pull off enough deals, and then getting cornered as a result. And they're going to be shipping out a lot of players this summer, I think, including trying to find money for Sancho, who's not doing himself any favors right now. At least he hasn't gone on strike from training, although it may happen. Greenwood, who's doing all right in Spain. And
that is a thing that Ratcliffe came out today. I don't know if you saw that Ratcliffe had some words about Greenwood, and he said that he basically didn't say that Greenwood isn't going to be allowed back, and kind of left the door open for him, which was concerning on day one.
Yeah. Well, let's be charitable and say that was about maintaining his market value. Because if you're trying to get rid of a toxic asset, you get toxic asset. I mean, because Greenwood in the current market should fetch over 100 million, right? If it was just him, without all the baggage. He's young, talented, English goal scorer, like every box ticked for £100 million player. Realistically, United are going to get less than half of that because he's a toxic asset. And I don't know how true that report was that said that Getafe get 20% cut, which is incredible if that's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that one. But
if that is true.
Yeah, he's been doing all right, and he's got a few goals. He's playing basically as a wide player, but often in a 4-4-2, and in an average team. So, that'll be one of the sales that'll happen. Sancho will be another. I'm sure it'll be one of the sales. Whatever Ratcliffe has said, I'm sure. I can't believe they'd try and bring him back. It would take a massive mea culpa push on Greenwood's part, which he has shown no inclination to do, in order to repair the damage. And even then, we want to move forward. We don't want rapists at the club. Alleged.
Yeah, don't do a Bellingham.
Yeah. Top man. They'll chip a few out. We'll see on obviously Van der Beek will go. Not that we're going to get very much money for him. Hannibal Mejbri has played 5 times for Sevilla, not very many minutes. There was a report this morning saying that it doesn't look like they're going to try and execute the option to buy, which was a €20 million option. Still, there should be a market for him. He's a good enough player that someone will want him, even if it's not quite working out for whatever reason at Sevilla. I'm not sure why. Who else?
Yeah,
we'll see. There'll be a decision on there. So
that move for Hannibal was difficult. Like, Sevilla are a team who are massively underperforming, and to go into a team like that, especially when it's a massive club, is always difficult for any young player. And their team is still good. And they've got players like Rakitic, who, like, he's still a world-class player, I think. So it was always a difficult move. He's still got plenty of promise, I think.
Yeah, Hannibal's competing with Sumare, the Leicester, on loanee for replacing midfield by the looks of it. Yeah. As you do. All right. We have a game at the weekend against Fulham, which is a kind of mixed bag from Fulham this season. They are not in the relegation fight, really. They're not pushing further than that. They obviously lost Mitrovic, their principal goal scorer in the summer, who they haven't obviously replaced. But Marco Silva, he's a kind of pretty known quantity now in England, and he's produced a decent side.
Yeah, they're really similar, apart from, like you say, Mitrovic. To last season, they've still got Andreas Pereira playing behind the big striker, which is now the Muniz, who scored a couple in I think he scored 3 in their last 2 actually. Um, who looks decent enough, and then they've obviously still got João Palhinha, who's
Yeah,
I guess going to move on in the summer. Like United were obviously linked to him at one point, and Bayern were linked to him. I think he almost went to Bayern, didn't he, last summer? I think
that's
they're a
right.
team that are perfectly set up to play United in a way, as in for us, because they're quite open. They don't come and sit and defend. They're not that quick on the counter attack. They like to play football. They like to keep the ball. And I think when they play teams that again and higher in the division, then they usually do come unstuck. Though they nearly beat Arsenal, I think, earlier in the season away from home, and they've had
Hmm.
some good results and they've got some good players. But I think they're about as middle as the road as it gets. And also, I think they're just a
Yeah,
team that even United, like this kind of era United, are a team that we usually do beat. And I think I genuinely, I wouldn't look at many fixtures throughout the season and be more confident than playing Fulham at home, to be honest. It's just perfect
yeah.
team for us to play, I think.
Well, yeah, we'll see whether we get the kind of basketball style game that we got last time out from United. That was way too open.
Mm.
Even against Wolves, actually, where United were better and had more control for an hour, it was way too open. And I looked at all the last 5-6 games. United have averaged between 16 and 23 shots against each game. It's just way too much. And a mixed bag on the XG there, but just yeah, people still walk straight through our midfield. Obviously, it's got a bit more solidity with Kobe Mainu and Casemiro there, but it's just very apparent that Casemiro's legs have gone. He needs to just sit in front of our box and just play that role. He just can't cover enough ground if he pushes forward at all, and he gets caught all the time. Nearly. I mean, either he gets caught because he's out of position, caught fouling, or just caught in terms of space and positioning. He just can't cover enough anymore. I'm sure, 100% sure that'll be an area they look at in the summer to either to move him on, but definitely to bring some more legs into midfield. So that's a worry, just how easy it is to counter against United. As you said, I didn't see a lot of pace from Fulham. I don't think they're that quick. So it's not like they're the most dangerous team in that respect for United. I'm just surprised how much. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised. Maybe like the pointers have been there all along, but just how much United have gone from trying to become a possession dominant side last season to mixed results to being very inconsistent in doing that, but at least doing the high pressing bit in the first part of this season to pretty much giving up on that and just becoming a counter-attacking side now. It looks like, and this is again very reductive, but it looks like volleyball right now.
Yeah.
Past 5 or 6 games.
The big concern for me is just like the rest defense. Like, and the way we give the ball away so cheaply. Like, I think Bruno is one of the big culprits for this because he drifts wide, he drifts deep, and then he tries one of his Hollywood passes, and then automatically, if it doesn't work out, then the other team are on the attack. And Bruno, as being one of the central players in the system, is completely out of position, and then they're straight onto the midfield too. And if Casemiro's also gone wandering at this point as well, then they're straight on Mainu, or if Mainu's been caught straight upfield, then they're straight onto Casemiro. And
Yeah.
that's the problem with the chaotic nature of the way that we play football, is that we don't build attacks with a clear structure with players like City do, where people are 5 or 10 yards apart from each other and there's structured spaces. So when they lose the ball, then they're in a great position to press back and get the ball, and then the other team can't transition and just counters on them straight away. Whereas when we lose the ball, and because we turn the ball over, usually within 5 passes almost every single time we get the ball, which is so frustrating. And I think it almost comes from a position of feeling like, especially against Luton, going down to 2-1, they're like, oh, we need to go and get another goal now because we've conceded. And then they just almost get into this frenzy and like, oh, we need to just score. And then like, so they play these stupid passes, give the ball away, and the other team come hurtling forward, and then we get the ball again, and they're like, I didn't score. And then I give the ball away, and then it just keeps happening. Like you say, like this end-to-end basketball game happens, and it's just chaos. And I think it comes from the manager in one respect, but it's also the players. Like, we don't have the calmness to just go, okay, let's build an attack. Let's put 10 passes together. Let's try this, try that. And then if we do lose the ball, then we'll win it back again. And we don't have to just, and it's that just improving like the temperament of the team and also improving the way we build attacks. But I don't know if that is kind of the way to, I think maybe it is part of the strategy to just break on them as quickly as possible. But right now it doesn't
Well, I think
work.
it is now.
Yeah, but it just doesn't work because
I mean,
the passes we play aren't good enough currently.
No, that's right. I mean, we've speculated a lot about what the endpoint of Ten Hag's process is here, but it feels, I mean, it's so vertical at the moment in terms of like getting the ball from back to front. I don't mean long ball football. I'm just mean quick transitions. Mm-hmm. So vertical, and very very low percentage or high risk football, which they are creating chances from, but also they are not structured well enough. So City. Obviously, they're trying to play a very different style of football, but one of the reasons why Guardiola has played Stones in central midfield alongside Rodri or Akanji now is to make sure when De Bruyne gives it away, because he gave the ball away, Bruno gave the ball away 17 times against Luton. De Bruyne gave the ball away 32 times in their game at the weekend, right? So they have the player that's taking all the risks. And Guardiola likes to play one controller and one runner in wide areas. He's always balanced, but he can get away with that, or City can get away with taking those risks in the final third because behind them they have people eating up the space and stopping the break. So they can't stop it with the press up front. They stop it with the mid block in midfield, and they don't give away as anywhere near as many chances as United do. United are not set up in central midfield to play the high risk football at the front if they're not going to win the ball back straight away. And they do turn over the ball quite a lot, like win turnovers in high areas, but they also give away the ball a lot. And so, it doesn't feel like it's all kind of balanced up yet. I'll look to address that in the summer, I hope. With some of the personnel, but I couldn't tell you what football we'll get next season. I know what we'll get now. I think it just looks like he's gone, okay, the best way to win now is to sit in the mid block and try and break fast.
Yeah, and go to...
He's won 4 in a row, 5 with the cup game, so that's proving out. And if United keep on doing that, then he'll be right, Ten Hag, and he'll keep his job.
It feels like mid-90s Fergie football with less quality. Like the times where we used to just, like, if you score 4 and we'll score 5 type of thing, but we just don't have the quality to. Well, but having said that, like you say, we're on a good run at the moment. But Luke Shaw being out this weekend is a huge loss, and
huge loss.
It's working the last few games because we feels like when you look at the team, it's like, wow, this team's decent. It's good, but 1 or 2 players falling out of that team, Luke Shaw being a big one, then again the team becomes a lot weaker, and then we will struggle to put results together because so much of it is requiring individual quality and class. And and Lindelof isn't the answer at left back, obviously.
Not a left back. Definitely Dalot has to play at left back if Shaw's out. I mean, he's having a good season, Dalot, for all the criticism we've given him.
Yeah.
I think he's much improved in his all-round game. But Lindelof at left back is a disaster. So Dalot on the left, and maybe it's Lindelof on the right. I don't know how and where Aaron Wan-Bissaka is at the moment. I guess he's not fit. So I don't know what the other options are. There just aren't. We've shipped out 3 fullbacks on loan, and Malacia's
sent one of the other fullbacks back
at
on
the moment.
The fullback we had on loan sent him back.
Yeah, we could do with cancelling Alvaro Fernandez's loan to Benfica. It's such. That was weird.
I
It was
never
curious,
understood.
right?
Never understood that.
So he's gone out to Granada, and then they do this deal with Benfica where it's a loan with an option. He's obviously behind who's Grimaldo, isn't it? The left back at Benfica. I may be mixing my names up there, but he's obviously behind. So he's struggling for minutes there. He's struggling for minutes at Granada because he was behind the captain in the pecking order there. And at the same time, we cancel Reguilón's loan. He's gone to Brentford, probably about his level. But I mean, we've got one fewer options at left back, and Malacia is nowhere near fit. He's still out with his knee injury. So this is really, really curious about what the squad planning was there.
I completely agree. And I think Reguilón is really limited, and he's not a Man United footballer, but he's better than Lindelof at left back. And he also, because he's because he's also left-footed and reasonably okay at attacking. He's not Luke Shaw, but he's all right. He also just brings just balance to the attack. And when you play obviously Lindelof, it doesn't. And also when you play in Dalot at left back, it doesn't, because Dalot has to play almost as that centre midfielder, as he's done a lot. Like when he has played at left back, whereas at least with Reguilón, he's going to play like a left back, and he makes the whole team symmetrical in the way that you set up, and it makes Marcus Rashford less predictable with what he's going to do because he has an overlapping runner and stuff. And that's the same thing with Alvaro. Like, okay, say you think Reguilón's so shit that he doesn't deserve to be at United, then you send him back. But at least Alvaro is great at going forward. Like defensively, like I know there's so many questions about him, and he's quite slow as well. Like his positioning, he got caught out a lot at Brentford last season. But like going forward, he's so good. And again, bringing balance because he's a left-footed left back. Like when, like you say, when it comes to squad playing, I don't understand those at all. And I just don't like a right footer playing at left back either. I mean, unless they're so good at dribbling.
Unless your name's Dennis Irwin.
Exactly. I was about to say. Unless you're so good at dribbling on the outside, like Dennis Irwin used to be, like dribbling onto his left foot and crossing the ball with your weaker foot, then you can get away with it. But there are so few footballers who can do that. Sometimes Dalot does, but then you play on Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who's played at left back a couple of times this season. He can't really kick the ball with his left foot, and Lindelof can't really kick the ball with his left foot either. So you just become so predictable. You like a Sunday League team where you're basically playing your right back at left back because you haven't got a left foot player.
Yeah, all very odd to be fixed, this kind of squad planning, I think. All right, that's it. Thanks a lot, folks. Bonus content for Patreon backers at patreon.com/NQATpod if you'd like to get our bonus show and merch and stuff like that. We are very grateful for your support, but we're going to talk about Marcus Rashford. Report in the papers today that PSG are interested in replacing Mbappe, who's off to Real Madrid, with Rashford. So we're going to have a chat about that. Everyone else will catch you the weekend. Thanks a lot.